The desert stretched endlessly under the blazing sun, a golden ocean of sand that seemed to swallow all sound. Wind swept across the dunes, carrying with it whispers of history long forgotten. For centuries, this part of the Sahara had been untouched, a barren land where only silence ruled. Yet on this day, silence gave way to the noise of tools striking stone. A team of explorers had gathered at the base of a half-buried structure. Their leader, Rami, stood tall, his face lined with both age and determination. He was not a man of wealth or power, but he carried within him a hunger for knowledge. Many called him a dreamer. Others said he was chasing ghosts. But when he discovered strange readings deep beneath the sand, he knew there was more waiting to be revealed. For weeks, the team dug tirelessly. At first, they thought it was another pyramid, one of many that dotted Egypt's vast deserts. But the deeper they dug, the clearer it became that this was no ordinary monument. The stone was not the sandstone common to the region. It shimmered faintly under the sun, metallic in some places, and smoother than any carving tool of the ancients could have achieved. Finally, as dawn broke on the 35th day, their efforts uncovered an entrance. The sight froze every man and woman in silence. The doorway was unlike anything they had seen before. Its frame was carved with lines that seemed alive, shifting with the angle of the light. Strange symbols stretched across the surface. They were similar to hieroglyphs but sharper, more precise, as if etched by something beyond human hands. Rami stepped forward, brushing away the last of the sand. His heart pounded with excitement, yet unease lingered in his mind. For years he had studied the pyramids, temples, and tombs of ancient kings. This doorway did not match any known design. The symbols pulsed faintly, almost as though they responded to his presence. Behind him, the younger members of the team whispered. Some spoke of hidden treasure. Others feared a curse. One of the older workers crossed himself and muttered prayers under his breath. The air was heavy, and even the desert wind seemed to hold back as though the land itself was waiting. "We are not the first to see this place," Rami said quietly, his voice carried in the stillness. "But perhaps we are the first who are meant to enter." They cleared the passage further until the full door stood before them. When Rami touched its surface, it was cool, far cooler than the burning air around them. A low hum vibrated through his fingers, faint but unmistakable. The others stepped back nervously. Rami pressed harder, and with a sudden sound like stone grinding against stone, the doorway shifted. Sand cascaded down as the entrance opened slowly into darkness. The team lit their lamps and peered inside. The first chamber stretched far beyond what the torchlight could reach. Its walls glowed faintly as though the stone itself held a memory of light. Carvings lined the walls, but they were strange, figures of humans standing beside towering shadows. Some of the shadows held spears of fire, others raised hands that seemed to bend the stars themselves. Rami's breath caught in his throat. These carvings told a story older than any he had studied. They spoke of a time when humans were not alone, when something greater had walked beside them. The idea filled him with both awe and fear. The air inside was dry but carried a weight, as though countless years pressed down upon those who dared to enter. Dust swirled with each step, and the silence grew heavier. The explorers felt as if unseen eyes followed them from the darkness. One of the younger explorers, a man named Khalid, pointed to a section of wall. The hieroglyphs there were clearer, almost glowing under their lamps. Rami leaned closer and read slowly. "The Hall of Shadows. Gold hidden in darkness. To enter is to walk with courage." The word sent a shiver down his spine. Was this truly treasure or something else entirely? The phrase could mean knowledge or power or perhaps something not meant for human hands. The team moved deeper. The floor sloped gently downward, leading them further into the earth. Every step carried them away from the desert above and into a world that seemed untouched by time. At last, they reached a wide chamber. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow. In the center stood several doorways, each framed in the same strange metal as the entrance. Unlike the outer door, these were not closed. They shimmered with an unnatural darkness, as if they were not doors at all but pools of shadow waiting to be crossed. The explorers froze. The lamps should have lit the paths clearly, yet no light entered those doorways. The darkness was too complete, too solid, as if it resisted being revealed. Rami stared at them, his mind racing. He had read of trials set by kings to guard their tombs, traps of stone and flame. But this was something beyond human design. Fear gripped the group. Some begged to leave. Others whispered of curses and angry spirits. Rami listened but did not turn back. His heart told him that this was the path humanity had been meant to find. The Hall of Shadows had waited across ages, hidden beneath sand and silence, waiting for a moment like this. With steady hands, he raised his lamp toward the nearest shadowed doorway. The darkness rippled faintly, almost alive. He took a breath, stepped forward, and placed one foot across the threshold. The Hall of Shadows had opened its gate. The air inside the chamber grew heavier as Rami stepped closer to the doorway of shadow. His lamp flickered, its flame bending strangely as if it feared to enter. He stopped just before the threshold and looked back at his team. Their faces were pale in the dim light, their eyes filled with both fear and curiosity. Khalid, still clutching his lamp tightly, whispered, "What if this is not meant for us? What if the kings built it to trap intruders?" Rami's voice was calm, though his own heart beat fast. Kings built tombs for themselves. This is something greater. Look at the carvings. They speak of a hall, not a grave. We were meant to see this, the team murmured uneasily, yet no one turned back. The mystery of the place held them. Each one felt that walking away would mean losing something far more valuable than gold. Rami raised his lamp again, and this time the shadow in the doorway rippled like water. For a moment he thought he saw a faint path beyond, a corridor stretching further into the unknown. He did not cross yet. Instead, he studied the other doors in the chamber. There were 5 in total, each framed with the same metal, each filled with the same strange darkness. The explorers spread out cautiously. A young woman named Hannah traced her fingers across the walls beside one of the doors. The carvings here showed humans lifting torches while dark figures loomed above them. Yet the humans did not bow or run. They stood tall, their flames shining bright against the shadows. "Look," Hannah said softly. "These pictures. They show people passing through the darkness without fear." Rami nodded slowly. "It is a test." At that moment, the wind outside howled through the entrance behind them, and a strange echo filled the hall. It was not the sound of the desert wind, but something deeper, like a whisper rising from the walls themselves. The explorers froze. The whisper grew clearer, not in words they could understand, but in tones that felt alive. Khalid gripped his lamp tighter. "It is speaking to us," he said, his voice shaking. Rami stepped closer to the carvings and laid his hand upon them. The stone was warm, pulsing faintly as though a heart beat within it. The whispers grew softer, then faded. When they were gone, Rami turned to his team. "It wants us to enter," he said, "but not together. Each of us must choose a door." Fear rippled through the group. To separate in such a place was madness. Yet as they looked around, each doorway seemed to pull at them in different ways. Hannah felt drawn to the one with carvings of flames. Khalid could not stop staring at a door where the shadows curved into shapes like wings. Rami himself felt the strongest pull toward the central doorway, which stood taller than the rest, its darkness deeper, almost endless. Still, he hesitated. To enter meant risking everything, but to turn away meant leaving behind a truth greater than treasure. "Listen," Rami said firmly. "This is no tomb. It is older than any king. These halls were built to guard something, perhaps knowledge, perhaps power. If humanity was meant to find it, then we cannot run from it." He placed his foot just inside the shadow. At once the chamber shifted. The air rippled and the lamps dimmed. The team cried out in surprise as the walls themselves seemed to bend and stretch. For a breathless moment, they felt as though the desert above had vanished, replaced by an endless void. Then just as quickly the world steadied. Rami stood inside the doorway unharmed. He looked back and beckoned. "It is safe," he said. "The hall accepts us." Encouraged, Hannah moved to her chosen door. With a deep breath, she stepped inside. The darkness swallowed her form, yet her lamp still glowed faintly as she disappeared beyond sight. One by one, the others followed, each through a different door. Khalid hesitated the longest, his fear plain, but at last he too vanished into the shadows. Only the echo of their footsteps remained. Inside the central passage, Rami felt the air grow cooler. The walls no longer looked like stone, but like smooth metal, glimmering faintly with unseen light. Strange patterns pulsed along the surface, not carved but alive, shifting like the veins of some great creature. He ran his hand across them, marveling at their perfect shape. Then he heard it. A whisper again, but clearer this time. It was not a voice he knew, yet he understood the meaning in his heart. It said, "Walk with courage, for light is born in darkness." Rami felt a calm settle over him. He walked deeper, his lamp steady in his hand. The floor sloped downward again, taking him further beneath the desert. At times, the shadows moved at the edges of his sight, shapes forming and dissolving like living smoke. But whenever his fear rose, the words repeated in his mind, guiding him forward. Elsewhere, Hana found herself in a chamber filled with carvings of fire. Her lamp seemed stronger here, glowing brighter than before. The flames on the walls shifted as if alive, showing her images of people carrying light against towering shadows. She realized that her task was not to fear the dark, but to trust the flame she carried. Khalid stumbled into a hall where wings of shadow stretched across the ceiling. His breath caught as the wings moved, stirring the air with a force that nearly pushed him to his knees. Fear almost broke him. But then he saw carvings of humans standing beneath the wings without bowing. He straightened and walked forward, remembering Rami's words. In each passage, the explorers faced visions and tests. The Hall of Shadows was alive, watching, weighing their hearts. Far above, the desert wind blew over the buried gate, covering it slowly again with sand. To the world outside, nothing seemed to stir. Yet beneath, humanity had taken its first steps into a place older than memory, where whispers guided them toward a truth hidden for ages. The hall had opened. The trials had begun. The moment Rami crossed deeper into the central passage, he felt as though the desert above had disappeared. The silence was complete yet not empty. It was the kind of silence that carried weight, pressing against his chest and ears. His lamp flickered, but the darkness around him seemed to resist its glow. The walls were smooth, not carved stone, but something stronger, as though metal and stone had been fused together. Patterns shifted faintly across the surface, glowing lines that pulsed like veins of light. They stretched ahead into the shadows, guiding him forward. Every step echoed, though the sound never carried far. Rami's mind wrestled with questions. Who had built this place? How had they shaped walls that seemed alive? Why had it been hidden for so long under endless sand? The carvings outside had shown humans and shadows together, almost as equals. But now that he was inside, he wondered whether the shadows had been guardians or masters. He moved with steady steps until the passage widened into a new chamber. Here the darkness seemed thicker, almost alive. His lamp dimmed again, its flame bending as if a heavy wind pressed against it. He raised it higher, and the light revealed shapes moving along the walls. They were tall and thin, their forms stretching unnaturally. At first he thought they were carvings, but then they shifted and swayed. Shadows had detached themselves from the walls. One by one, they stepped forward. They had no faces, only outlines shaped like ancient soldiers holding long spears. Their movements were silent, yet their presence filled the air with tension. Rami's hand trembled, but he forced himself to stand tall. The shadows circled him, their forms swaying like smoke. For a moment he thought they would strike, but instead they stopped. One lifted its spear and pointed toward the floor. Rami looked down and saw a pattern glowing faintly beneath his feet. It was a circle divided into paths like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Rami understood. This was no tomb trap. It was a test. He stepped carefully, placing his foot on the first glowing path. The circle shifted and the shadows moved closer. Fear clawed at him, but he remembered the words he had heard earlier. Walk with courage, for light is born in darkness. With steady breaths, he traced the path, each step lighting the symbols beneath his feet. When he completed the circle, the shadows lowered their spears. They bowed their heads slightly, then melted back into the walls. The chamber fell silent again. Rami stood still, his chest rising and falling. He had passed the first trial. Far away, Hana faced her own test. Her chamber burned with shifting flames painted across the walls. The air was warm, and her lamp burned brighter here, casting long shadows. She walked forward, but suddenly the flames rose high, filling the space with light so strong it almost blinded her. Her heart raced. She shielded her eyes, but the heat grew unbearable. She realized the fire was not real, yet her body still felt its power. She closed her eyes and whispered, "It is not to harm me. It is to test me." When she lowered her hand and looked again, the flames parted. In their place stood a single torch carved into the wall. Its flame was calm and steady. Hana understood then. The test was not about resisting fire. It was about trusting her own light. She raised her lamp high and the fire on the walls died away, leaving her path clear. Khalid, meanwhile, struggled in his hall. The great wings of shadow above him beat the air, filling the chamber with a rushing sound that nearly drove him to his knees. He wanted to run. His heart told him to flee back to the entrance, but the door behind him had vanished. Only the wings remained. He stared at the carvings on the floor. Humans stood beneath the wings, unshaken. None bowed, none ran. He forced himself to rise, straightening his back even as the wind pressed against him. Step by step, he moved forward. The wings lowered, folding in silence, and the hall grew calm. Each explorer, though separated, walked their own path of trial. Each faced fear shaped by shadow and memory. Yet in each case, the test was not about strength of body, but strength of spirit. Back in the central chamber, Rami found another doorway waiting. Unlike the first, this one glowed faintly with golden light at its edges. He touched it carefully, and the glow pulsed, opening like a living door. Beyond, he glimpsed something vast, a chamber greater than any temple, its walls glittering faintly as though lined with rivers of light. He turned, hoping to call out to his team, but the passage behind him was gone. The hall had shifted again, separating them fully. They were no longer explorers moving together. Each was alone, chosen for a path. Rami's breath steadied. He stepped forward into the golden glow. The doorway sealed behind him, leaving only the silence of the hall. Deep beneath the desert, the Pharaoh's Hall of Shadows continued to awaken. The explorers had entered its trials, and though they did not know it yet, the hall was not merely testing them. It was watching, weighing, deciding whether humanity itself was worthy of what lay hidden in darkness. Rami's footsteps echoed faintly as he moved into the chamber of golden glow. The light spread across the walls like streams of living metal, flowing and twisting in shapes that resembled both rivers and veins. The ceiling stretched high above, hidden in shadow, as if the chamber had no end. He paused, holding his lamp high, though it was no longer needed. The light around him was soft, not from fire but from the walls themselves. In the center of the chamber stood tall statues at least twice the height of a man. Their faces were smooth and featureless, their arms crossed as if standing guard. Each one held a long spear pointed downward, the tips glowing faintly with pale light. Rami felt a chill. These statues were not carved by hand. Their symmetry was too perfect, their surfaces too polished. They seemed more like machines than stone. He stepped closer, and at once the statues moved, slowly. With a sound like stone grinding against stone, their heads turned. Spears lifted, crossing the air with sudden force. The chamber trembled as the guardians came to life. Rami stumbled back, his heart racing. The guardians stepped down from their platforms, their spears glowing brighter. They spread out, blocking his path forward. Their faceless heads turned toward him as if waiting. He gripped his lamp, though he knew fire would not stop them. His breath came fast, yet he remembered the lessons of the hall. These trials were not traps, but tests. The guardians were not here to destroy, but to judge. The floor beneath him lit up with lines of golden light, forming shapes and symbols. A circle stretched around him, divided into patterns like steps of a puzzle. The guardians stood at its edges, unmoving now, their spears still glowing. Rami understood. The puzzle must be solved. He studied the glowing lines. They resembled the carvings he had seen earlier. Humans with flames, shadows bowing, light pushing against darkness. The symbols were arranged in a path, though some lines broke into confusing turns. It was not a simple game. To walk the wrong step could mean failure. He drew a deep breath and began. His first step lit the symbol of a torch. The guardians did not move. His second step brought him to a circle with shadows drawn, bending away from the light. Again silence. His courage grew, but on his third step the floor darkened beneath him. A sudden wave of shadow rose from the walls, rushing toward him like smoke. The guardians lifted their spears and the air vibrated with a sound like thunder. Rami froze, his body trembling. His mind screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The words returned to him, the ones he had heard since entering the hall. Walk with courage, for light is born in darkness. He forced his hand to raise the lamp high. The shadows paused, swaying around him. The light from his lamp cut through them, and slowly the floor beneath him lit again with golden glow. The guardians lowered their spears. The trial continued. Rami pressed on step by step. Each symbol guided him, though doubt threatened to pull him from the path. He kept his eyes fixed on the glowing lines, his breath steady. Finally, after what felt like hours, he reached the center of the circle. The last symbol lit bright as the sun, and the chamber trembled. The guardians froze. Then, one by one, they placed their spears against the floor and bowed their heads. The glow from their weapons faded, and silence filled the hall again. Rami had passed. Far away, Hana was also tested. Her passage had led her into a chamber where the walls burned with carvings of fire. At first, she feared she would be consumed by the heat. But as she walked, the flames rose into shapes of shadowy beasts. Their jaws opened wide, their forms towering above her. Her instinct told her to run, but she steadied herself. She remembered the carvings that showed humans lifting their torches with pride. She lifted her lamp high, and the flames bent away. The beast shrank back, fading into smoke. Step by step, she pushed forward, her courage proving stronger than fear. Khalid's trial was harder still. The wings of shadow had become a storm, wind and darkness pushing against him until his knees gave way. The sound of rushing air filled his ears, drowning his thoughts. But then he saw, faint on the wall, a carving of a man standing upright, his arms spread wide beneath the wings. The figure did not bow, did not fall. With all his strength, Khalid rose. He spread his arms wide, copying the carving, refusing to yield. The storm slowed, the wings folded, and the hall grew calm. He had proven himself. Each explorer, though apart, was bound by the same lesson. The hall demanded not strength of body, but strength of spirit. Fear was the weapon of the shadows, and courage was the only answer. When the trials ended, each of them found themselves standing before another doorway. Unlike the ones before, these glowed not with shadow, but with golden light. A warmth spread from them, gentle and inviting. The hall had judged them, and it had allowed them to move forward. Rami stood before his doorway, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. The guardians had bowed, and now silence filled the chamber once more. He knew this was only the beginning. Beyond the golden light lay the true heart of the hall, and perhaps the secret it had guarded for ages. He stepped forward, his lamp still burning, and the doorway opened. The glow swallowed him whole. The Hall of Shadows had tested humanity's courage, and humanity had answered. Rami stepped through the golden doorway, and at once the air changed. The warmth of the desert seemed far away. The chamber he entered was vast, larger than any temple he had ever studied. Its walls curved high above, so distant that his lamp could not touch the ceiling. Yet he did not need the flame. The room itself glowed with a soft golden light, like dawn breaking inside stone. At the center of the chamber, a great river of liquid metal flowed. It shimmered like molten gold, yet it gave off no heat. The surface rippled gently, as if stirred by a wind that did not exist. The sight stole Rami's breath. It was not treasure in the way explorers dreamed of, not piles of coins or jewels, but something far more mysterious. He moved closer, his footsteps echoing faintly. Symbols lined the floor around the river, glowing with the same golden light. They spoke of power, of knowledge, of fire taken from the stars. The carving showed humans reaching toward the flowing gold, their hands raised high. Above them shadows loomed, but the humans did not bow. They stood strong, and the gold seemed to answer them. Rami knelt beside the glowing river. He extended his hand carefully, letting his fingers hover just above the surface. The golden liquid pulsed, sending ripples outward as if alive. He felt no heat, no danger, only a deep hum that vibrated through his bones. He withdrew his hand quickly, his heart racing. "This is not gold," he whispered to himself. "This is something greater." Far away, Hana entered her own chamber. She gasped as she saw a smaller stream of the same golden liquid. Her torchlight reflected across its surface, though it needed no light of its own. She crouched near the stream and felt the same hum in her chest. She thought of the carvings that had guided her, of humans carrying torches against the dark. This golden river was their flame. Khalid stumbled into his chamber, his body weary from his trial. He froze when he saw a pool of gold before him. His fear returned for a moment, whispering that it was a trap, that touching it would mean death. But then he remembered the wings of shadow and how he had risen against them. He took a step closer, steadying his breath. The pool rippled gently, almost in welcome. In each chamber, the explorers faced the same truth. The gold spoken of in the carvings was not treasure for kings. It was energy, pure and living, stored in a form beyond human knowledge. It was a gift, or perhaps a weapon, waiting for those with courage to claim it. Rami rose to his feet, his mind racing. He had studied legends of ancient pharaohs who spoke of power from the gods, of light carried into the afterlife. Perhaps those stories were not myths at all. Perhaps the pharaohs had once glimpsed this place, or heard whispers of it through ages of memory. Humanity had been walking in the shadows of this secret for thousands of years. The ground beneath him shook softly. The golden river brightened, its light spreading across the walls. Lines of energy raced upward, forming shapes in the air. For the first time, Rami saw words written in glowing light. Words not of any language he knew, yet he understood their meaning in his heart. Gold is light. Light is knowledge. Knowledge is courage. Take it and walk into the stars. The message filled him with awe. This was the truth hidden beneath the desert. The hall was not a tomb, but a vault of knowledge, left for humanity when it was ready to face its fears. The gold was not for greed, but for growth. He wondered who had built this place. Were they shadows from another world? Were they guardians who had watched humanity rise from the sands? Or were they something even older? Something that had shaped the first stories of gods and kings? His thoughts were broken by a sound. The river rippled violently, and from its surface rose a shape. It was tall and dark, formed of shadow, yet its outline shifted with the same golden glow. Its head bent toward him, not in threat but in judgment. Rami's body tensed, yet he did not flee. The figure raised its hand slowly, pointing to the glowing river. The meaning was clear. He must choose. Behind the shadow figure, the walls showed new carvings, humans reaching into the gold. Some rose with light shining in their hands. Others fell, swallowed by darkness. The hall had not only tested courage, it now demanded a decision. Rami steadied his breath. He thought of his team, of Hana and Khalid facing their own chambers. He thought of the countless generations who had walked the desert above, never knowing what lay beneath. This was not his alone. It was for all of humanity. He lowered his lamp and extended his hand once more toward the golden river. The liquid pulsed brightly, reaching upward like a flame. As his fingers touched its surface, light surged through him. His chest filled with warmth, his mind with clarity. He saw visions, worlds beyond the stars, shadows moving through galaxies, humans standing tall among them, carrying flames of gold. His knees shook, but he did not fall. The shadow figure bowed its head slightly, then faded into the walls. The river calmed, its glow softer now, but its hum stronger than ever. Rami knew then what the hall had guarded. This was not treasure of kings. This was the true gold of humanity. The power to face darkness with courage, to hold light even when surrounded by shadow. As the glow faded, a new doorway opened at the far side of the chamber. Rami stepped toward it, his heart still racing. The trial of courage was over. Now the hall would reveal its warning. The golden river behind Rami settled into silence, yet the chamber did not rest. The walls pulsed with faint light, as though the hall itself was waking from a long sleep. The doorway before him glowed brighter, pulling him forward. He stepped through and the air grew colder. The glow faded until only his lamp gave light. The chamber he entered was enormous, stretching farther than his eyes could see. Shadows hung heavy in the air, thicker than smoke, shifting slowly as if alive. Rami's hand tightened on the lamp. His heart told him this place was different from the others. This was not a trial. This was the heart of the hall. Behind him, the doorway sealed with a sound like stone grinding shut. The last golden light vanished, leaving him alone in the vast dark. His flame flickered weakly, swallowed by the shadows. Then the ground trembled. A low hum rose from beneath the floor, deep and steady like the heartbeat of a giant. The shadows stirred, curling upward in great waves. They gathered together, forming shapes far taller than the guardians he had faced before. A single colossal figure rose, its head brushing the unseen ceiling. Its form was made of darkness, yet lines of golden light flowed across it, tracing patterns like armor. Its eyes glowed faintly, 2 points of fire staring down at him. Rami could not move. His knees shook, his breath caught in his throat. Yet he forced himself to raise the lamp, its flame trembling in his hand. The light reached the giant shadow, and for a moment the lines of gold glowed brighter. A voice filled the chamber. It was not sound carried by air, but a presence that pressed into Rami's mind. The words were clear, though no lips spoke them. You have walked with courage. You have touched the gold. You have proven that humanity can face the shadows. The figure leaned forward, its eyes burning brighter. But courage brings more than light. It brings notice, and notice brings trial. Rami's chest tightened. Who are you? He asked, his voice shaking yet steady enough to carry. The giant's presence grew heavier. I am not a king. I am not a god. I am the watcher of this hall, the guardian of a truth older than your pyramids, older than your first cities. Long ago, when your kind was young, shadows passed over this world. Many feared, many bowed, but some stood tall. For them this hall was built. The words struck him like thunder. Rami realized the hall was never meant as treasure for one man or one king. It was a message, a test across time. The figure straightened, its shadow filling the chamber like a night sky. The gold you touched is not wealth. It is power drawn from the stars, fire hidden in darkness. With it your kind can grow, but with it you are no longer unseen. Others who walk the void will feel its light. They will come, some to judge, some to take. Rami's hand trembled. You mean, this was not only a gift, it is also a warning. The figure nodded slowly. Your kind must choose. Hide in fear or rise with courage. If you rise, the stars will see you, and the shadows will come again. The chamber shook. The walls split with lines of gold, revealing carvings that had been hidden until now. They showed humans standing on ships of light, their torches raised against waves of shadow. Other carvings showed cities burning beneath dark skies. Humanity's future balanced between two paths. Rami's heart raced. He thought of Hana and Khalid, of his team walking their own trials. He thought of the countless people above, living in the desert cities unaware of what lay below their feet. Humanity had always believed it was alone, but now he knew the truth. The hall had been waiting for this moment, for this choice. The figure lowered its head again. You are marked now. The hall has seen you. The stars will see you. Tell your kind the shadows stir. The trial of humanity has begun. The voice faded, but the figure did not vanish. It sank back into the shadows, its golden lines dimming until only silence remained. The hum beneath the floor slowed like a heartbeat returning to rest. Rami fell to his knees, his lamp shaking in his hand. His body trembled, but his spirit burned. He understood now why the hall had tested them. It was not to find treasure hunters or thieves. It was to find those who would not bow when the darkness came. Slowly he rose. The chamber shifted, and a doorway of light opened ahead. Warm air brushed his face, carrying the faint scent of the desert above. His trial was over, but the true test was only beginning. Far away, Hana and Khalid reached their own final chambers. They too saw carvings of humans rising into the stars. They too felt the whisper in their hearts that humanity had been chosen and marked. Each of them carried the same truth, though none spoke it aloud yet. When they emerged from their separate passages, the team reunited near the great hall of doors. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. None needed to ask what the others had seen. The truth was clear in their expressions. The hall had awakened, and in the depths of its shadows something greater had stirred. Above, the desert wind howled across the dunes, covering the ruins with sand once more. To the world outside, the night was calm. But beneath, humanity had touched the gold hidden in darkness, and the stars would never be the same. The explorers stepped out of the hall as dawn broke over the desert. The rising sun painted the sands in shades of gold and crimson. The air outside felt almost unreal after the heavy silence of the chambers below. For a long moment, they simply stood in the open, breathing deeply as though waking from a dream. Rami looked back at the half-buried entrance. To his eyes it already seemed different, as if the desert itself was eager to swallow it again. Sand drifted on the wind, spilling down the walls, covering the strange symbols. Soon, perhaps in days, perhaps in weeks, the hall would vanish once more beneath the shifting dunes. Yet the truth of it would not vanish. It lived now inside each of them. Hana's hands trembled as she clutched her lamp, though its flame had long burned out. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I felt it, the fire in the gold. It spoke to me. It was not treasure. It was something alive. Khalid nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. It showed me wings. It showed me what we can become if we dare. But it also showed what waits for us beyond the stars. Shadows greater than we have ever known. Rami listened, his chest heavy but his spirit alight. He thought of the figure in the chamber, its words etched into his heart. The trial of humanity has begun. Those words echoed louder than the desert wind. The others turned to him, waiting for answers. Rami felt the weight of their eyes, of the knowledge they now carried together. For centuries, explorers had searched the sands for gold, for power, for secrets of kings. They had found something greater and far more dangerous. He spoke carefully. The hall did not test us to guard treasure. It tested us to prepare us. Humanity has been noticed. The shadows will come again. We cannot hide. We must be ready. The group stood in silence. The desert stretched endlessly around them, vast and empty, yet no longer lonely. Each of them felt the truth. Humanity was not alone and had never been. As the sun climbed higher, they packed their tools. The site looked unchanged, just another ruin buried in sand. To any stranger, it would seem worthless. Only the explorers knew the power beneath, the living river of gold, the guardians, the warnings carved into the walls. They began the long walk back to the nearest settlement. The desert was harsh, but their steps were lighter than before. Each carried a piece of the haul within, not in their hands, but in their hearts. Along the journey, Hannah spoke again. Do you think the world will believe us? Rami gave a faint smile. Perhaps not at first, but truth has a way of rising like the sun. We will share what we can. Even if they laugh, even if they doubt, the time will come when they will see. The haul will not stay buried forever. Khalid's brow furrowed. And when the shadows come? Rami's gaze turned to the horizon, where the sun burned bright against the endless sky. Then we will stand as we did in the hall. Fear is strong, but courage is stronger. That is what it wanted us to learn. They walked on, the desert stretching endlessly before them. The silence between them was not empty now. It was filled with purpose. When they reached the village at the edge of the dunes, the people looked at them with curiosity. Dust covered their clothes and their faces were drawn with exhaustion, but their eyes burned with something new. When asked what they had found, Rami only answered, history older than kings. At night when the others slept, Rami sat alone beneath the stars. The desert sky stretched wide and endless, a sea of light across the heavens. He thought of the carvings that showed humans walking among the stars, carrying torches of gold. He thought of the warnings of shadows that would return. His heart was heavy, yet hopeful. Humanity was not ready yet, not fully, but it would be. He believed in that more than anything. The hall had chosen them not because they were strongest, but because they refused to bow. That was the true spark of humanity. He whispered to the night sky, "We will be ready." Above him, the stars burned quietly. To most they were only distant lights. But to Rami they were watchers. Somewhere beyond, shadows stirred. Somewhere beyond, the true trial waited. The Hall of Shadows sank once more beneath the sands, hidden from the eyes of the world. But its purpose was complete. It had passed the flame to those willing to carry it. Humanity had taken its first step into a larger story, one written not in stone, but in courage. And though the shadows would one day return, they would find a people who had learned to stand, even in the deepest darkness. For in the heart of humanity there was always a spark that could burn brighter than fear, a spark that could light the way through shadows, a spark that could turn gold hidden in darkness into the dawn of a new age.